Hearing, the reception of sound waves. So, what is sound detection? When you speak, you cause air to vibrate faster, right? You move the air molecules, and that creates a sound wave. The sound wave is converted by the ear to fluid wave, and then the fluid wave leads to the stimulation of hair cells within the ear. And those hair cells are going to send the impulses to the brain for interpretation. So let's take a closer look. Okay, let's look at the ear in general, right? So this outer part is called the auricle or the pinna, and that's designed to catch sound, right? Catch it. This little part is called the helix, and this one, the lobule. Here's our external auditory canal or external auditory meatus. And along with this, this whole section is just all called the external ear or the outer ear. Then we move into, through the canal, we move into the middle ear, where we have the tympanic membrane, that's what we call the eardrum, and then the auditory ossicles. So let's shoot down here for a larger view. There's our tympanic membrane, and here's our auditory ossicles. So when sound comes in, right, the eardrum senses or catches or vibrates in response to the air molecules being pushed in there, right, and that wave. The drum starts to vibrate, which sends a vibration through the malleus, which hits the incus, which then in turn hits the stapes. So the stapes, right, is going to be that transmitter of this. It's the last bone in there, and it transmits the sound to the fluid. So from sound vibration to wave, and that becomes amplified by about 20 times because we're going from a large receptive area, that eardrum is larger, and then into the smaller size of that stapes. So that causes an amplification effect. And if you think about, like, let's say you're putting 40 gallons of water through a tube that is this wide, right? And then you put that same 40 gallons of water through a tube or a pipe that's only this wide, right? It increases the pressure, right? Because there's more flow going through a smaller space. Same here, more flow going through a smaller space increases the amplitude or the pressure, increases the vibratory stimulus, if you will. It amplifies it. All right, so let's look at the pathway of the sound wave. So here we go. Boom, I hit my snare drum, and the sound wave travels right to this eardrum, or the tympanic membrane. It vibrates that, right, causing the auditory ossicles to vibrate. Here the pressure is amplified, okay, so the pressure gets amplified, and then the pressure wave created by the stapes pushing on the oval window move through the fluid in the scala. So here's the fluid in the scala. This is part of the cochlea. And so pushing through here, this vibration pushing through the water, like if you were to blow, if you had a cup of water and you just blew on the top, it would ripple, right? So here we have a vibration that's causing a rippling in the fluid in here. It can go two directions. If it's within hearing sound, it's going to go through here, right? And then get interpreted and heard down through the round window, out through this passageway. But if it is not within hearing range, right, it will go this way, and then it won't go through and excite any hair cells. Okay, so by going down this way, we're actually going in, and we're going into the tube, and we're getting into the basilar membrane where the hairs are existing, and they're going to cause a vibration. So let's look at that. Okay. Sorry guys, here we go. This is, I'm using this one just to illustrate, right? We had the stapes create a sound vibration or a wave vibration in the oval window coming through here. So that piece that we just looked at coming in, that's where the cochlea or the cochlear duct, where the option to go to the basilar membrane is just in this area. Okay, so then it can travel all around and through here. And so this is what it looks like. It's still folded, and here when we're looking at this, okay, we're kind of looking at this section of the cochlea, right? Just the initial reception of the sound wave. So the base of them is relatively, it's like a thinner basilar membrane, and then it gets thicker and thicker as you travel in. So here's a photo of the cochlea. So these hair cells are sitting within the basilar membrane. So they kind of are floating there. You need that. The membrane is what's they're sitting on. The membrane vibrates because of the vibration, and then in turn, that causes a pivoting of these hair cells. Real quick about sound, right? So again, we're pushing air molecules. We're changing the pressure by creating a force with our vocal cords, or here it's a tuning fork. And I'm just showing here in this slide that there's the amplitude is what causes us to sense if it's a sound that is loud or soft. So I have a softer amplitude, and then I have a louder amplitude, right? So that is measured here in this wave. The pitch is more the frequency, so that the higher pitch, these sine waves would then get closer together. The lower the pitch, they would be wider apart. So amplitude is specifically the loudness represented here. Oh, here it is again. High amplitude, very loud. Low amplitude, soft. Okay. Before I get into the sound damaged cochlea, I want to back up. Okay, this is a very busy slide just to show you the basilar membrane again, right? So this is the membrane in which the hair cells are sitting, okay? So back to the photo of the cochlea, here we have the airwaves, and now what I'd like you to see is just what I was speaking of before about that wave transmission. So here's the basilar membrane, and so when this starts to vibrate, right, due to that movement in the fluid, this vibrates, and then that causes in turn these hair cells to vibrate. So every hair cell or microvilla stereocilia, right, cilia, each one of these cells has within one of the hairs has a little bit of these like feathering out tips, okay? And what happens is they bend as a result of the basilar membrane. They actually bend only more so at the bottom because it's an actin filament, and that design is what causes it to pivot and move. And just like pulling open a door with a drawstring, right? When this vibration starts to happen, it pulls on this tip link, is what it's called, and it pulls it open. And that pulling of it open is going to release potassium and allow potassium to enter. So calcium and potassium levels shift to send this to start a neurotransmission to communicate with the brain, right? So we go from sound wave vibration to a neurotransmitter to a chemical makeup that signals that firing off to allow the brain to receive that information. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. After the neurotransmitter is released, the action potential fires for the cochlear nerve, and it senses the hearing. Okay. All right. So that's that. That's about as detailed as I want to go over for how hearing works. Thank you for listening, and I'll pause here. Brief pause. So the normal versus sound damaged cochlea. I love this. So when I don't love that I've lost hearing over the years, but I like this image because you see this beautiful shape, and that these stereocilia are in a nice form. Here we have damage of them, so you don't see them um, as distinctly or as beautifully arranged anymore. They've been compromised. Most likely, compromise happens from really loud sound or a very high amplitude. So where you might encounter that is when we used to go out, we used to go out dancing, and we go to a concert, and the volume that is set at a concert is at the range of where your ear can receive sound. So it really actually does damage the cells in there. Let me just see. Hearing loss, prolonged exposure, greater than 90 decibels. Okay, dB decibels. So you don't want to go over 90 decibels. And we are at a concert. We're talking up to like 120. You have the possibility of wearing like a watch now that has this information. So a lawnmower strikes up and you can look at your watch and you can see how many decibels in it. So the closer it is to 100, 120, 120 is where you would actually begin to damage the hair cell. So you don't want prolonged exposure. It's really important to wear ear protection when mowing a lawn, because that's prolonged exposure. And I think that is actually, I used to wear earplugs when I went out dancing. So I think I actually lost my hearing from mowing lawns, twice a week, a couple hours every time. And just that kind of compromised my hearing. So the lesson is simply protect your ears.